even with all I'm afraid of because of how big I'm getting. I still can't stop doing what's causing it.
Oklahoma or Timbuktu, you're killing yourself with the food. Which part of that is so hard to understand?
Today we are talking about Julius JT Clark, one of the most extreme transformations ever shown on My 600L of a Life. And when I say extreme, I really mean it. JT wasn't just another patient struggling with his weight. When he first appeared on the show in season 8, he was 32 years old and weighed around 892 pounds. That is almost 900 pounds. At that size, life is no longer normal. Every simple thing becomes a challenge. Getting out of bed takes effort. Walking across the room takes effort. Taking a shower, getting dressed, riding in a car, even standing for a short amount of time can become painful and dangerous. But JT's case was even more shocking because he was also carrying a massive lymphedema growth on his left leg. That mass was estimated to weigh around 100 pounds by itself. So he wasn't only dealing with severe obesity, he was dealing with a giant growth that made moving even harder, affected his balance, and made every step look exhausting. When you first see him, it's clear that his body is reaching a breaking point. He is still alive, but he is not really living. He is trapped by his own body, and every day looks like survival. JT's life before meeting Dr. Now was built around food, pain, and dependence. Food had become more than just something he ate. It had become his comfort, his escape, and his addiction. Like many people on My 600L of a Life, JT didn't get to almost 900 pounds because he was simply hungry. This was emotional eating. This was a coping mechanism that got completely out of control. Every time life felt stressful, food was there. Every time he felt depressed, food was there. Every time he didn't want to deal with reality, food was there. But the comfort never lasted. The weight stayed. The damage stayed.
Okay, so what do you do all day?
I sit down, pretty much play video games or watch TV.
Do you have a goal in your life?
I do have a goal in my life.
What is it?
I want to see the world. I've always wanted to go to Japan and live there. It'd be nice to
And
do
eventually,
something like
food
that.
became the thing that controlled his whole life. At the beginning of his journey, JT was in a relationship with his girlfriend, Jessica. She was one of the few people still helping him, and you can tell right away that she was carrying a heavy emotional burden. She wasn't just his girlfriend anymore. She had become his caregiver. She helped him with daily needs, traveled with him, supported him, and tried to keep him moving toward treatment. But that kind of pressure can destroy a relationship. There is a big difference between loving someone and becoming responsible for every consequence of their addiction. Jessica clearly cared about him, but she was also tired. And honestly, it is hard to blame her. One of the biggest themes in JT's story is dependence. He depended on food to cope. He depended on Jessica to function. He depended on other people to help him get through basic parts of the day. And at first, it seemed like he wanted Dr. Now to rescue him too. But Dr. Now does not work that way. Dr. Now can give a patient a plan, medical care, surgery, and structure, but he cannot do the work for them. He cannot make them follow the diet. He cannot force them to stop eating. And he cannot save someone who refuses to take responsibility. The trip to Houston was already a major test for JT. For most people, driving to another city is just a road trip. For JT, it was a dangerous mission. Sitting in a vehicle at almost 900 pounds was painful. Getting in and out was difficult. Every movement took planning. Every stop was stressful. And the whole trip showed just how much his weight had taken away from him. He was not just uncomfortable, he was physically trapped. Even before he reached Dr. Now's office, the journey itself showed how serious his condition had become. When JT finally met Dr. Now, there was no sugarcoating. Dr. Now looked at the situation and immediately understood how dangerous it was. JT was not just overweight, he was in emergency territory. His body was under massive stress, and that 100-pound lymphedema growth on his leg made everything worse. Dr. Now told him very clearly that if he did not change, his food addiction was going to kill him. And that may sound harsh, but with someone close to 900 pounds, soft words are not always enough. This was a life or death situation. Dr. Now put JT on a strict high-protein, low-calorie diet. The goal was to help him lose enough weight safely before he could be approved for bariatric surgery. And this is something a lot of viewers sometimes forget. Weight loss surgery is not a magic solution. Dr. Now usually makes his patients prove they can follow the diet first because surgery can only help if the patient is willing to change their eating habits. If someone cannot control their eating before surgery, they can still fail after surgery. The surgery is a tool. It is not a miracle. At first, JT struggled. That was not surprising. You do not get to nearly 900 pounds without years of habits, emotional damage, and food addiction behind it. But Dr. Now was not interested in excuses. He wanted results. He wanted JT to understand that every choice mattered, every meal mattered, every day mattered, And when someone is that close to losing their life, "I'll try harder later" is not good enough anymore. As the episode continued, the relationship between JT and Jessica became more strained. Jessica had reached a point where she could not keep carrying everything. She had been his support system for a long time, but the weight of his needs and his attitude became too much. Eventually, she left, and that moment became one of the biggest turning points in his story. For many patients, losing their caregiver would be the moment they completely fall apart. They would use it as a reason to give up. They would say they cannot do it alone. They would go back to the food because the emotional pain feels too big. And honestly, it would have been easy for JT to do the same thing. But this moment forced him to face a painful truth. Nobody else could save him. Jessica could not lose the weight for him. Dr. Now could not eat the diet for him. His family could not carry the consequences forever. If JT wanted to live, he had to become the person responsible for his own survival. That is where his story starts to shift. JT was not a perfect patient. He had frustrating moments. He had moments where he seemed stubborn, angry, and stuck in his excuses. But he also started making real progress. And in a case like his, progress was not just about looking different. Progress meant getting away from the edge of death. Progress meant being able to move a little better. Progress meant giving his body a chance to survive surgery. Progress meant proving that he was not completely lost to the addiction. After working through Dr. Now's program, JT managed to lose a huge amount of weight. He reportedly lost around 50 pounds on his own before being approved for bariatric surgery. That part is important because it showed Dr. Now that JT could follow instructions and commit to the process. Once he proved that he was serious, surgery became possible. And after surgery, his weight loss continued in a dramatic way. By the end of his main weight loss journey on the show, JT had lost roughly 400 pounds. That is an insane number. Most people cannot even imagine losing 40 pounds, let alone 400. He went from almost 900 pounds to around the 400 to 500 pound range during his initial televised journey, and later updates have suggested that his progress continued even further. Some reports claimed he eventually dropped to around 329 pounds, which would mean he lost well over 500 pounds from his starting weight. And that is what makes JT's transformation so crazy. Even after losing 400 pounds, he was still considered very large. That tells you how extreme his starting point really was. For most people, 400 tend to like more cement voltimals. For JT, it was progress. He had to lose the weight of multiple grown adults just to get to a place where he still had a long way to go. But that progress mattered because it changed what was possible for him. It opened the door to surgery, more mobility, and eventually dealing with the massive lymphedema growth that had been controlling his life. The lymphedema mass was one of the most shocking parts of JT's episode. It was not just something that looked uncomfortable. It affected everything. It made walking harder. It made hygiene harder. It made daily life harder. It added pain, shame, and physical danger to an already impossible situation. So for JT, losing weight was not only about getting smaller, it was about becoming healthy enough to finally address that growth and remove one of the biggest obstacles in his life. Later updates and reports suggest that JT did continue making progress after his original episode. He kept a very low profile compared to many reality TV participants, which honestly makes sense.
Hi.
Hi.
The JT surgery went very well.
Okay.
We got the mass off, and the weight of the mass was 63 pounds.
63.
At least 20 pounds of liquid leak out. So this was almost about 80 pounds hanging on his leg. And he's in recovery, waking up, and everything went very well.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'll see you.
Not everyone wants to live their entire life online after being on a show like this. But entertainment reports and follow-up clips have suggested that he managed to keep off a huge amount of weight and eventually had additional medical procedures related to the lymphedema on his leg. If true, that would be a massive medical milestone for him, because that growth was one of the things keeping him trapped physically and emotionally. Another part of JT's story that deserves attention is his mental health. After the show, he reportedly opened up about struggling with clinical depression, and that matters because weight loss does not magically fix everything. Losing hundreds of pounds can change someone's body, but it does not erase years of emotional pain overnight. Many people think transformation is just a before and after photo, but real transformation is much messier than that. You can lose the weight and still have to deal with depression. You can have surgery and still have to rebuild your identity. You can become more mobile and still have to learn how to live without using food as your main source of comfort. That is why JT's story is more complicated than just he lost weight. He had to fight the physical side and the mental side at the same time. His body needed medical treatment, but his mind also needed healing. Food addiction does not disappear just because the scale goes down. The same emotions are still there. The same triggers can still exist, and if a person does not deal with the reason they were eating in the first place, it is very easy to fall back into the same cycle. There were also reports that JT later entered a new romantic relationship.